Day 5. We managed 20,000 steps plus yesterday, so that was quite a good day. This morning we are off to see the Little Mermaid first, and then after that we are off to a shopping street. Apparently it is the longest shopping street in Denmark. Apparently it's the longest pedestrian street in Europe, so maybe there'll be some shops and some interesting things there. Or, considering our shopping experiences so far in Copenhagen, possibly not. Today's the first day it's really felt cold enough to need to zip my coat up from the word go. That said, most of the UK is blanketed in snow this morning, so possibly even colder back home. Which means that we've come to Denmark to escape the British snow. Interestingly though, despite a thin dusting of snow everywhere here, nothing has fallen apart. Back at home in Bude, we've got people complaining on the local Facebook groups that the primary school hasn't even been closed down, which is ironic because those same people complained a few weeks ago when the school had to close for a day because of a genuine emergency, which just goes to prove that British people love complaining. You do need to cross the roads pretty fast here. The green man doesn't stay on for very long at all. I think you'd struggle if you were disabled. Just quickly before we get on the metro, a quick view of the local football park in the snow. And now we're off on the metro to see the Little Mermaid. One of the really curious things I noticed about the metro line is that the trains are a bit rubbish at announcing where they are going to. There's a sign that shows one stop on the station, but it doesn't show any of the other stations on the route, so every time you jump on, it's a bit of a puzzle. One of the two sides of that sign is the cycle path. The other one isn't. Guess which one is which? I'm not sure which because there seem to be cycles on both sides, but it all just adds to the excitement of the experience. On our way to the Little Mermaid, we've stumbled across something. There's lots of raised banks by the river. It looks a little bit like another castle or something. Might even just be flood protection, who knows? So behind the bank is basically just a row of houses. They look like kind of old minor houses. There's a whole load of people just about to drive past on segways though. They are obviously learning to drive them on a cobbled street. So there's a sign behind me saying that this street is called Fortunestuck. Perhaps it was a banking street, or maybe they even made jewellery. On the other hand though, somebody's just gone into one of these buildings and the door was opened by a gentleman in military fatigues. So I'm wondering, especially with the big high bulwark of grass all the way around, whether it might actually be some sort of military street. And here we are down by the sculpture of the Little Mermaid. There are lots of sculptures around in Copenhagen. This one is pretty mediocre if I'm completely honest. So come and visit it so you can say that you have done, but don't be too disappointed when you see it, because it's simply not very good. On balance, you're probably better off just watching the Disney animated movie. I'm here now by another example of Copenhagen's sculptures. This one isn't famous, but I have to say it's twice as impressive as the Little Mermaid was. And another example of a better sculpture. I can't even compare this one to the Little Mermaid. It is in a whole different league. However, it's not famous. I think it's supposed to have some sort of fountain in front of it, although I'm assuming that that's been drained for the winter. And another, this time a sculpture of a man riding a horse backwards while throwing a spear. Here we now are at the start of the longest pedestrianised street in the whole of Europe. And like any good Copenhagen street, one of the first shops sells glögg and churros and waffles. And clearly capitalising on their status as the longest street, there is a Guinness World Record shop behind me. Right behind me there's somebody who looks like they're trying to beat the number of jumpers put on record. Today we decided to bring a packed lunch with us because there was such a poor choice of places to eat yesterday and the day before and the day before that. So what we're really wanting to do is find somewhere to sit down and eat our lunch. However, one of the things we really notice in Copenhagen is the fact that there don't seem to be any public outdoor chairs anywhere. By sheer chance we've just stumbled across another Christmas market. Now this one has 7 whole stores, which makes it almost as big as our weekly Saturday market at our village. We now have sandwiches inside us and are feeling a bit more chirpy. I almost bought myself some glögg, but when we got to the front of the queue it was going for 80 kroners or 11 euros, so that was a no. Interestingly, there's somebody filming behind me, so have a look at them. We found another little Christmas market, which is very nice. It's a little bit bigger than the other one as well. It's still not very impressive for a big city though. Okay, don't touch anything, it's very expensive. We're now back at our Airbnb. That's all 4 of Copenhagen's Christmas markets done. There's nothing wrong with any of them, but they were all a little bit underwhelming. They were kind of what you'd expect from a large village or perhaps a small town, but not really as expected for a major city. So if you're thinking of coming to Copenhagen just to see the Christmas markets, I would suggest don't. Similar sentiments for the Little Mermaid. It was rubbish. There were lots of other monuments around which were quite good, so if you do go and see the Little Mermaid, then have a wander around, and there are other things to see that are worth seeing. But the Little Mermaid is definitely one which is worth a miss unless you happen to be passing. So we've decided to come home early, read a book, make some dinner, watch a film, and just relax for the evening. But for now, from Copenhagen on day 5, that's me signing off. Over and out. Bye. Day 6, and it's our final full day here in Copenhagen. We'll be flying back home tomorrow. Today we are off to a neighbouring town on the train. We thought we'd better leave Copenhagen for a little bit and see another part of Denmark so that we can at least say that we've visited Denmark properly. It's chilly outside here today, although most of the snow's gone. Back in the UK, apparently everything's ground to a halt with snowstorms, and the news, it looks like Vlad is about to launch a nuclear attack on the whole world all at once. Meanwhile, Ukraine are sending in long-range missiles, so actually being in remote Denmark is probably quite a good thing at the moment. Almost a shame we have to go home tomorrow. Right, time for one last trip to the toilet, and off we go. One of the really strange things I'm noticing as I'm walking out here today is the light. It's in the morning, but it is kind of the peak of the day, if that makes sense, and it looks like we're at the edge of twilight. I feel like we should be retiring and heading off towards bed. It's funny how just being those few degrees further up north just makes it seem so much darker at this time of year. Now on the train and heading out of Copenhagen. What's super exciting is it's actually a double-decker train. That's right, not one, but 2 floors of train. I've counted them repeatedly. So of course we had to sit on the top floor. Saying that, I'm kind of glad that we did. The scenery is beautiful and there's a lot more snow outside of the city. We're about halfway there on the train and we're going through all the suburban and rural areas. These areas are a lot more pretty than the central city, and it makes me think it would be really nice to come here for a trip to go and do photography and exploring and that kind of thing. So perhaps rather than a city break, a countryside photography and walking kind of holiday would be really nice. Next stop is ours, so time to put my jacket on. We're down by the docks and I don't know if you can see in the distance, but just over there is Sweden. Well, here we are in Helsingør. The castle that we're heading to is behind me. There's a nice little cafe just ahead of me, just out of the shot. It's a bit of a bleak place and it is starting to snow, but at the same time it's got something about it that Copenhagen was just missing somehow. So far, I have to say that I do like it better. On the way to the castle, we're just down by the dockyard and there is a random seal sunbathing in the snow. I've tried to take a little photograph of him with my camera, so fingers crossed. In our excitement about the seal, we've just walked the wrong way, so we are now heading back in the opposite direction along a pretty wooden pier. I'm not sure if you'll even be able to see the snow in the video, but I'm loving every moment of it. I'm not sure why, but there's something about snow which kind of awakes the inner child in me. Though it's definitely a positive that I'm not having to drive anywhere just now, otherwise I might not appreciate it quite as much. Apparently at one point, historians believe that this castle was the inspiration for Hamlet, although I understand that subsequent historians have dismissed that as being a false belief. Whichever of the two is true, the castle are certainly capitalising on it. We were actually toying a little bit with the idea of nipping over to Sweden. There's a fast boat that goes over there and it's such a novelty for a British person to be able to nip over to another country without too much trouble, especially since Brexit. But it's snowing and the castle is looking really pretty behind us, so we've decided to splash out. It was 250 kroner for the two of us to get in, which works out about maybe 27 British pounds, which is pricey, but probably not as expensive as nipping into somewhere similar in the UK. So on balance, we decided that we would give it a whirl. I think we found somewhere to sit down and eat our sandwiches now. We're now in the courtyard of the castle and it's really quite pretty. Definitely somewhere to bring your camera, though unless it's a little bit waterproof, probably not when it is snowing like this. Usually we don't do these castle tours because they're quite expensive, but this one is included and we've stumbled across it 15 minutes before the next tour is about to start. So we shall join the tour. But first, I think we need to have a sandwich. It's about 2 minutes to 1:30 when the tour starts and we are getting ready to go. Looks like it might just be me and Tamsin. So that was actually just a 15-minute introductory tour, but it was still really interesting, definitely worth a listen to. course, no castle's complete without the all-important Lego room. And the snow's getting really heavy, so it's probably almost time to call it a day and head back home. Anyway, that was the castle. I'm really impressed with it. I'm going to have to give it a big thumbs up. Cheese. That was literal cheese heaven. Why on earth don't we have nice cheese shops like that in the UK? Perhaps when I retire from medicine, that's what I'm going to open. Though perhaps the reason is that we Brits don't like anything more exotic than a slice of cheddar. Right, because I am very normal, I'm off into the normal shop now. Well, that's disappointing. It actually is a bit normal in here. Little disaster. Well, teeny bit of drama there. We've all had to get off the train. It's broken. Apparently there's some sort of problem with opening and closing the doors, which is causing a safety hazard. I'm not sure if that's the only problem. I kind of missed a lot of the information as it was all in Danish. However, apparently there's going to be another train to take us to the right place in just a couple more minutes. So that was a bit of an uncomfy leg on the journey. However, it's only delayed us by about 50 minutes and there was no nonsense and no fuss, and they were pretty efficient really. So despite it being a small disaster, actually I'm quite impressed overall. And now we're on the last metro. Day 7, and we're off home today. We're going for a quick walk down to the park before we head off to the airport. We don't need to be at the airport for a good few hours yet, so we've decided we'll go for a quick walk before we head off. Even though we've been here for a week, I'm still struggling with the pedestrian crossings. I just can't get my head around this system of when they put the green man on saying it's safe to cross, they also put the green traffic light on for traffic to make it drive towards you. You'd think when they tell you it's safe to cross, rather than starting the traffic, they'd stop it. Maybe that's a cultural thing. Maybe it's population planning. I'm feeling a bit like I'm in America just now. De Angelis Donuts. And here we are. Actually, this wasn't where we were aiming for. In fact, I don't think we were aiming for anywhere in particular, but this is where we've ended up. There's a nice little picnic area behind me, so we're just going to sit there and have our lunch. Now just time for a quick browse around the shops, and then we will make our way back to the airport. How very Scandinavian. So we're just taking a shortcut through the cemetery. Seriously though, this was a cemetery that we kind of wanted to visit. It was on our list of extra things to do if we had time, and as we are passing we thought we'd pop in. To be honest though, I think it's one of the places that's maybe more worth a visit than anywhere else we've been in Copenhagen so far, except perhaps Tivoli, but that doesn't count because it's a theme park. It's really scenic here, really picturesque. There's lots of meandering walks, lots of trees, and lots of history really. And we've also just seen a red squirrel, which adds to the experience. Just one last quick graveyard stop before we head to the airport. Behind me is the grave of Hans Christian Andersen. Hans Christian Andersen was famous for many classical children's stories, such as The Emperor's New Clothes, The Little Mermaid, The Ugly Duckling, and of course, The Princess and the Pea. That's us leaving the graveyard, and now we are really going to the airport. Say that Copenhagen has the absolute stupidest check-in system that I've ever come across in an airport. You get off the train and that filters you straight into security. I thought it was a little bit odd that security came before you did all your check-in, but everywhere does things differently, except it turns out that it doesn't. So we were one of quite a few people who tried to get through the security with our cases, only to find out that that cancels everything out. So we've then had to queue for ages to get our tickets reissued, and then after that we had to do our baggage drop-in. Weirdly, all the baggage desks were closed and there was just one person controlling everything who had no idea what he was doing. I don't mean that in a mean way, he literally seemed to be absolutely clueless about what was going on, as were all the people in the queue. Everybody was joining, getting very mixed up. There were no signs to tell anyone how to get to that queue, so apparently you had to go and queue at another desk first of all to get tickets reissued, then another desk to get your baggage tickets before finally going to the baggage thing. So people were queuing for sort of 10, 15, 20 minutes only to find out that they needed to go to 2 other queues first. So Copenhagen Airport departures gets a very disappointing 1 star. So security was pretty awful as well. Tamsin's ticket didn't scan, it showed up as having been used before, even though we'd literally just had it printed out. Literally every single thing needed to be taken out of our pockets and out of our bags and put through the machine separately. So in the end, I think we ended up with 8 trays worth of security scanning rather than just the 1 bag that we were carrying. I know that security is pretty important, so I'm not complaining about the fact that they have tight security, but it just seemed so clumsy. Unfortunately, Copenhagen is not going up in my estimation after that experience. However, I'm now in the duty-free shop, so time for a quick browse around, and then fingers crossed they'll let us on the plane, and fingers crossed the plane will take off, and fingers crossed the plane will be able to land. So this is stupid, they don't seem to have a departure lounge, or if they do, it's hidden away somewhere. So everyone seems to be sort of hovering in just some random corridor where all the TVs are, waiting for the gate information to arrive. Come on, Copenhagen Airport, surely you can do at least a little bit better than this. I think we've now found the actual departure lounge, What's really strange is there's actually nowhere to sit unless you want to go and sit in one of the cafes or the restaurants. I don't know who thought that was a good idea. In fairness, the cafes and restaurants here do look quite nice, but we brought our own sandwiches. For now though, I'm just going to browse around the shops for a bit longer and see if they have a toilet here, which surely they must do. No? Looks like toilets are another thing that Copenhagen Airport hides really well. They have signs for shopping, they have signs for the smoking area, they have signs for gates, they have signs for transfers, but toilets, no sign. Oh, I take that back, I've managed to find them. They are well hidden though. And the airport has nowhere to fill up a water bottle either, which is surprising in this day and age. I really can't overstate how disappointed I am with Copenhagen departures. Definitely avoid here if you possibly can. There's so many people running for their flights, which tells me an awful lot about how efficient and effective this airport is. As stressful as the whole experience was, it looks like some people are finding it an awful lot worse, so I feel quite sorry for them. Down in Bristol, our case was immediately off the luggage carousel, which was very impressive. Now we just need to jump on the bus to our car and drive all the way home.